Show, Peter G Show, Peter G Show, Peter G Show. Divorced dad, single dad, divorced dad, single dad. Peter G Show.
Yes. Yes, it's Sunday again. Here's Peter. I have to announce myself. And then it goes silent. Lots of new things going on. I'm going to go silent. We'll have some music. I kind of got used to like a little music in the background, so it's kind of cool. But then again, I kind of liked just talking like I did. I'm watching some older videos of mine. As they come up through Facebook from a year ago, it's like I'm watching the transition, and it's kind of crazy. Hang on a second. I'm always doing things because we've changed things again this week. Every week we're changing things. And so I was, oh, there we go. That's a good reason. Personal hotspots. Turn it on. So we changed the, hey, man. So we're changing things constantly. Constantly, things are changing, and that's okay. But I'm the one having to make the adjustments, and I'm a little late in the game. Like I forget to practice. Practice makes perfect. And so I said, should we keep the music in? Should we not keep the music in? What should we do? And the question is, I don't know. I kind of like it quiet, but I kind of like music in the background too. How's everybody doing tonight? Sunday night, February 16th, 2020. It was a good show last week. If you missed it, and you caught it during the repeats. Hey, Pete. Yeah, I thought it was a good show. And I enjoyed it. And in fact, I mean, just crazy stuff. Again, divorce stuff. It just doesn't end. The stories. $500,000 spent on child custody and still going. That's enough to make you kind of sick. I would be, but I mean, I'm again, it never ends. Let's go back to some music. What do you think? I think we should. Let's see how long we can keep music in the background now. So anyway, here we are, just you, me, and however many are joining us tonight. I'm glad to be here. A lot of stuff again this week. I've been, hey, Pete, Pensacola in the house. That's right. God bless Pensacola. God bless every place and everybody who watches. I have, through the week, I get people that write in. They write after the show, or they write during the week. During the reruns, they comment. They do all kinds of stuff. A lot of kind words. A lot of kind words and support, and I truly, truly appreciate it. It's all about you people. I keep saying it. It's like I'm doing this the hard way. It's just like one person at a time. I'm not giving up. It's like I keep on. If I lose somebody, I gain somebody. And you tend to weed through the crowd. Sometimes, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. Don't ever claim to be. I'm just a guy on a mission. Funny, it's like today, I was talking to somebody, a stranger I met while I was in my endeavors, and she says to me, she says, you got a radio voice. And I go, I do. And I said, it's funny you should say that. I've been told I have a great face for radio. Little did she know. I said, it's funny you should mention that. I said, I'm working on it. Another 10, 20, 30, 40 years, I should get this down. Anyway, yeah. So, a lot of kind words from a lot of people, and I'm very, very thankful and grateful for all of you. I am. It's all about you guys. I share, and open up about me, and we open up with other people and share stories because I truly believe that someone's story helped you relate to something in your life. So that's why we share stories. It's all about the stories. Speaking of stories, tonight's going to be a night that I'm going to share a story. The story pretty deep for me. and I'm going to share it. And I thought about it long and hard for a while. I've bitched about little things here and there, but, there's good and bad in this story. But at the end of the day, it's, just life. Speaking of life, I could not be doing this show if it wasn't for Bolt Energy. Bolt Energy, folks, ask for it in stores. Bolt Energy, they're new. Electrify your senses. I like Bolt Energy. It's enriched with vitamins and antioxidants. Here's the kicker. No preservatives. Go find that in an energy drink. Wait, let me save you some time. There's no such thing except for Bolt Energy. I see a lot of energy drinks out there. The stores are just piled with brands. But Bolt Energy, it's not a gazillion ounces. It's just enough to get you going. Doesn't mess with you, get you all freaked out and jittery. Just gives you enough get up and go so you can do what you have to do. It's a cleaner energy drink. Bolt Energy, they're workout fanatics. I like it. Yeah, I know. And one good thing about this too also is that Bolt Energy tastes good. I like the way it tastes. Hang on one second. I'm going to pop it open. Oh, yeah. Oh. Like that. I like it cold. It's got a little bit of sparkle to it. Oh, yeah. Go out and get you some. If you can't find Bolt Energy, go on your laptop, phone, computer, iPad, whatever, and go to www.drinkboltenergy and ask the Bolt Energy folks, hey, where can I find Bolt Energy? They'll get back to you. Bolt Energy, these guys are workout fanatics. They make me look like Pee Wee Herman. And I like it. So, hey. Oh, man, I swear I'm going to start drinking. Bolt Energy, that is. Electrify your senses. Bolt Energy, all right? We'll talk about it again later. I like it. All right. So anyway, I get a lot of people during the week that write in some really nice stuff, and I get some people that don't. I got somebody who complained. The complaint department. It's like, take it up with the complaint department. And you know what? Granted, like I said, you could be watching a Facebook page and it looks like nobody's watching. Oh, speaking of which, watch party. Let's do watch party. I completely forgot. Watch party. I like a watch party. I want you to go to your phone, tablet, or whatever, and you hit the, you're watching the show, right? I know I am. Ooh, I forgot. I got to turn down the volume. Turn down the jams. Go to where you're watching and it says, hey, start a watch party, or share. Sharing is caring. And all you do is hit the watch party. And what happens is, it goes out to all your friends. This is what happens because, again, Facebook's a really weird thing. I have many pages that we're shouting out to or multi-streaming to. It looks like nobody's watching on one page. And again, my sponsor, he screenshots me the watch parties from his page, and he's got a gazillion people watching. And so you're sharing it, but we can't see and count it. But I don't care. Because I know that we're out there, and through the week we reach more people through the rebroadcast, through YouTubes, through LinkedIn. It's like it's gathering all the numbers. A lot of people have a problem with me being on Sunday nights because it's late, and on the East Coast it's 3 hours later. And people write in, they say, "Peter, I love your show," or "I dig you." Sometimes, most of the time, but I got to get up early in the morning, so I try to catch you at a later time. I don't care, so long as you catch me. Granted, there's better ways of doing this, but, I'm the man behind the curtain. This is like the friggin' Wizard of Oz. It really is. If you only knew the juggling act that we do to make this happen, and it's just the way it is. Daytona 500. That's right. Yeah, my life's a Daytona 500. Crash and burn. Crash and burn. So anyway, the thing is, you're not going to, people, especially I'm going to play this phone message that came through, that somebody left a message and they were pissed off at me. And they're a fan. Imagine if it weren't a fan. But anyway, so they're going to talk to, in fact, you know what? Can we do that? Yeah, let's do it. All right, I want you to listen to this now, okay? Because this is a fan. And this is how, I hate to see if she wasn't a fan.
Peter, this is some serious bullshit. I mean, I watch you all the time. You tell us to call in. I call you all the time. And I just have to leave a message. I mean, what kind of talk show host are you? Bolt Energy. I guess that's what you drink when you just want to ignore the people who are tuning in, all 7 of them.
Yeah.
That's some bullshit, Peter. Get it together. Pay attention to your fans.
That's it. Okay. So what she said was she calls in all the time. Number one, these phones do not answer, will not go through with unknown numbers, okay? So there was an unknown number that it came in on. And unfortunately, 2 people simultaneously called in at the same time, so it trashed both the calls, because there's another one, but she was nice, but she was asking about some questions and things. So number one, an unknown number, like a blocked number. Not going to happen. I got too many issues to be dealing with blocked numbers. You don't want to identify yourself. I want to at least know what state you're calling from, you know? It ain't going to happen. Number one, says she's a fan. She calls in all the time. I don't know. I don't know who the hell that is. Again, I used to have some people come and go. Remember, do you remember James from Culver City? He was a frequent caller until one of my girls, my security guards over there in Alabama, read him the riot act and tore him a new asshole. I don't know whether he got pissed off at me or she just really told him to go to hell, or both. And all of a sudden he just dropped off the face of the earth. Now again, you win some, you lose some, you get people, you don't have people. It is what it is. But this one, I'm supposed to be waiting for her call, be on standby. Shit happens. You call a radio station, you could be on hold for 30 minutes. And, I make no apologies. I'm sorry it didn't go your way, but, such is life. I do want you to call in, 818-259-7983. I've had that number, and in fact, people have not been calling in because they're enthralled by watching. Just kind of gone that way. I've spoiled you. A lot of people, I make a loving, reference to my lurkers. Everybody watches. They write me and tell me, Peter, I love your show, but I'm not going to call in. I like watching. So watch. You know what? You want to watch. But don't bitch at me if I don't get to your call. It's not that simple. I got a very small act of circus clowns here. It's like... And we're juggling. But believe me, when it comes to, polishing a turd, we are, this is the Wizard of Oz. We're doing real well with what we have to do. Want to take it bigger, want to make it bigger, but, it's life the way it is. On top of that, we changed the way we're streaming. Now I had to switch everybody over to, and I'm losing half my crowd. But I'm taking it like a man. I'm not worried about it. You know what? We'll get it together. It's just hard. I'm on Facebook's mercy. So it totally screwed me up. And unless you're watching from the other 3 pages and you know better. But, again, a lot of people got confused. So that's why I keep going over this stuff in hopes that you'll remember. And you'll hang in there. But anyway, so that's where that all goes, and it is what it is. But anyway, so so she get my shit together. I am sorry. Bolt Energy. Sorry. I like Bolt Energy, and they like me. And it all works together. When you get your own show, let me know. I'll check you out. We'll see how it works. And again, if I knew you were calling, I'd be, make special attention. A lot of people, if I do a show and I want to feature somebody, we talk about it ahead of time. I plan it. We do it. Now, the random phone calls, they're called random phone calls. I do want you to call in. I do. But, sometimes it doesn't always work out as badly as it did. Those phone calls weren't even recognized. They went straight to voicemail because it does not recognize the unsolicited numbers. So, next time, identify yourself. I don't know who the hell you are. And I don't know why you said what you said. Maybe one too many adult beverages. Not sure. Or if you meant it, that's cool. I love you anyway. But, because you said you watch me all the time. But you also said you call in all the time. I'm sorry. Can't, this isn't a perfect world. Definitely not on this show. Anyway, so here we are, Peter G, Life of Peter G. And tonight, anything else I want to talk about? No. Tonight I said I was going to talk to you and tell you a story. It's going to be storytelling time, and there's a reason why. Hang on a second. Over the past 7-8 months, I've really gone through some stuff with a personal friend, and it really has been a emotional roller coaster because it was about his health and things like that, and but it goes back even further, and I'm going to tell you because again, everybody's got perspective on me. I remember I had one guy write in, and he says, "You don't understand because you're rich and this and that." And it's like, shit. I'd love to tell you, all that stuff is true, but that's what you perceived because here I am doing this, and it looks like this, and sounds like this, and it's more than what, it's just different. And I'm in Hollywood, but it's not. It's all but the truth. I'm pretty straight up with you guys. For the most part, besides divulging more, I divulge a lot of personal information, stories, and things like that, but other than inviting you to my house, I tell you a lot of things. I'm very open, and I have no shame in it, and I'm proud of it. It's just life. And tonight I'm going to tell you something, very personal again, and because this is what, happened to me, and this is what happens to people, and I just felt that, I went through a lot, and I've gone through a few things in my past, lately, these past, divorce, life-changing. It takes a piece of you. The loss of my parents, 3 years apart, it takes a piece of you. Fortunately, there's a lot of pieces in you. You learn to live with certain things, and a lot of things that, help get you through the next stage. And, you want to cruise through things, but, let me hold $1. Give me $1. But we get through things, Lost my father last year, and that's another thing. Come March, I'm going to do a special show on parents, the loss of parents. I think it's going to be a deep show, but a very understanding show. I've been seeing a lot of people. If they're not writing about how old their parent would have been, or they just lost their parents, that's deep stuff. That's love. It's friggin' love, and it doesn't get any more than that, other than a child. I don't even want to go there, but you know what I mean. It's a big deal. So in March, I'm going to I got a show that I'm going to do, and we're going to talk about that stuff. Yeah, it's all about love. Life is, if you're a halfway decent person, you understand this. If you're a piece of shit, well, there's no hope for you. Or maybe there is, who knows? Why does the music sound different tonight? Anyway, so let's take it back. This is a story about a man called Mr. Ralph. Mr. Ralph came into our lives when my daughter was just about born, about 6 months old. He came knocking on our door, and we have had, she still lives there, I don't, a house that has a RV driveway and a gate and an RV pad. This man, and I was home a lot. When my daughter was born, I kind of stayed home for about the first 6-7 months. I wanted to be there, I really did. And, this older man came knocking on our door, and he had a cowboy hat on, kinda, and some glasses, and he had the shakes, and he came knocking on my door, and it's like, "Excuse me," and he had an English accent. And he told us this story that he has an RV that he pulled out of RV storage. He was going to go on a trip, and he was going to go on but unfortunately, he needs to have shoulder surgery, and he lost his space in this RV storage facility, and he was wondering if we would rent that space to him for about 6 months. Well, I've gotten a lot of flyers in our mailbox that, hey, wouldn't you like to see this RV in your driveway and this and that, we'll rent the space, because there's a lot of people apparently in this area that have RVs and sandbox toys or, trailers and all kinds of stuff. And very recreational out here. So I've always turned them down. It's like, don't need it, don't want to be responsible for it in our yard. We had dogs, we had kids, the whole deal. But for some reason, this person, Mr. Ralph, who we began to know, I said, let me talk to my wife. So I talked to my wife. I said, this older guy, and he probably was in his mid-60s back then, but he looked a lot older. There's people, mid-60s is nothing nowadays. talked about it, and for some reason, I felt bad for the guy. Kind of had the shakes. He had the shakiness to him. And I just said, here's the deal. We will rent you the place, but we're not responsible if your motorhome gets scratched. I mean, I know we have dogs, and it's fine, it's okay. I just need a place to it's like, okay. So lo and behold, he brings his motorhome, and he parks it in there. We close the gate, and this and that. He says, do you mind if I come? I'm doing a little piddling on it. I piddle on it and doing this and that, and so it's like, sure, yeah, whatever. That's your space. He would come over a lot. He's retired. Daily he'd come over. And he'd play on that motorhome, fixing little things and, nothing major, but he got to know the dogs. My daughter was, an infant. She was just a walking little thing, and we, and little by little got to know the man. The man was a racing engineer, retired. We talk about this and that, and I was around a lot, so I'd sit there, and sometimes we'd go sit in his motorhome, and we'd talk. Anyway, long story shorter, he found out he had no family. He lives around the corner from us, about 2-3 miles away, and, he had nobody. And so he's, hanging around, just killing the day, and comes over, piddles, goes home, and after a while, we'd be having Christmas or New Year's Day, and it's like, hey, Mr. Ralph, if you got nothing to do, we're having dinner New Year's Day. If you'd like to come over, come over. He'd come over, and we'd offer him in. He was a guy with no family or this and that. So we became tighter. Lo and behold, fast forward a couple of years, all of a sudden my life's falling apart, and I'm getting ready to go through a divorce. Or, we're getting ready to burn everything to the ground. Judge says somebody's got to go. Guess who's got to leave? Me. But at the same time, my mother was getting sick. She fell. And she was about 87. She was up there. And she broke her humerus bone, the ball, right? She cut that, brittle bones, the whole deal. And so she was in the hospital, then went to a nursing home while I was here in California. But eventually I was going to fly to Florida, break her out of the nursing home, and then care for her at the house and help her get up. She only had one arm, so she had no leverage. So I'd lift her like a forklift, to the bathroom, to this, to that. It was very, very difficult. Shoulders are a very tough recovery, even for healthy people, let alone the elderly. So it was quite for months, my arm, until it finally just kind of subsided because she finally got better. But anyway, I was going through the preliminary stages of going through a divorce, and my head was spinning. So thank God, it was kind of like a blessing that I went to take care of my mother, because it kind of got me out of here, and it gave me a legitimate excuse. In the meantime, while I'm in Florida, I get a phone call from Mr. Ralph. He says, hey, buddy, what are you going to do when you come back to California? And I said, what do you mean? He says, where are you going to live? And he sounded like that, I swear. Those who knew him, it's pretty close. I said, you know what? I don't know yet. He says, why don't you come live with me? He says, I've got plenty of room, and I'm tired of talking to myself. And it's like, I said, well, I appreciate it. I said, I'm not sure. A few weeks would go by. I kind of let it go, because I've never lived with anybody except for my parents and my wife. And I had a girlfriend in the past too, but that was, a long-time girlfriend. I didn't want to live with anybody. I wanted to live on my own. So all of a sudden, another couple of weeks goes by, the phone rings, and it's like, hey, buddy, you giving it any thought? When are you coming back to California? I said, I don't know. I said, she's not ready yet. I can't leave, I said, my father's old too. I said, but, I got to get her to a certain point, and then I got to come home. I have to come home. I miss my daughter. My daughter was little. She was only like 3.5. Excuse me. So, meanwhile, I'm talking to my father. And he goes, what's going on? I said, there's this guy, and he's an older guy, and he lives around the corner from, the house, and he's asking me to move in with them because, actually, Mr. Ralph needed money. I knew that. Man was living on Social Security, and I just had this feeling he needed some financial help. It's hell getting old and living on Social Security. My parents did it. When my mother passed away, my father, they're living on Social Security. All of a sudden, his income gets cut in half because He was getting my mother's Social Security. It got tough. I had to fill in the gaps, which I have no problem with, but it was tough. We lived within our means, but anything out of the ordinary, he couldn't do it. Well, that's what was happening with Mr. Ralph. He was getting older, and, California's expensive, really expensive. Social Security's not shit, and that's what he was living on. So he needed help, and he would never claim to admit it and this and that. He loved telling people how he was saving me, but I don't care. Whatever. Except when I got in knockdown dragouts with him, which we'll get to that. So I'm telling my father, I said, this older man, he lives around the corner, he's a family friend, and he's telling me if I want to live with him. He's got the space, I've been to his house, he knows my daughter, he's good with my daughter. So my father's like, go live with him. He says, and I go, I don't want to live with him. He goes, go live with him. He said, and again, I'll never forget this. He says, one hand washes the other. This is a phrase or saying that will go down in my life. One hand washes the other, which is true. You really can't wash your hands with one hand. It's very difficult. So the one hand washes the other. He needs me. I kind of need him too. I didn't need him, but here was my theory. I didn't want to get a place of my own because, or at least it was better that I didn't get a place of my own in the beginning, because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't want to commit to anything and sign leases, and I just, my life was up in the air. The divorce was just crazy, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know where I was going to go, what I was going to be doing. So I thought, what, this is kind of good in a way, because I don't have to pay 2 or 3 times the expenses, having my own place. Maybe my dad's right. Although I don't like living with somebody, because I've definitely believed that sometimes friendships turn into non-friendships, which, again, I'll get to that in a minute, or 5. So I said okay, because he called me 3 times. I move in, I come back to California, I move in, everything's good, but this man, let me explain, when I first met him and he had the shakes, he was dealt a bad hand. You know how you have people in your life? Some people are 85 years old and they look great, and some people are 55 years old and they just have health problems. Well, this was a man that got dealt a bad hand. He started having a lot of health problems. He had spinal stenosis, he had surgeries on his neck and back and fused, and his back looked like a railroad track with screws all down it and botched surgeries. He was a mess. They hit a nerve on his spinal cord, and it messed everything up, and he just wasn't a well man. On top of that, he's South African Englishman. Smoked like a friggin' freight train, and by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's time to have a drink, or 5. But, all in all, he was a decent person. He wasn't a bad man, but he had a certain charm to him. He did. The accent, and he could be very charming. So I moved in. I said, you know what? For now, let me get feel for things, see what's going on, and I'll move. We'll do this. And again, he was good. I needed a place that was okay with my daughter, and she had plenty of room to run around, and it was good. And when I moved in, when my daughter was here, we'd sit down and have dinner as a family. We cooked. My daughter ate great as a baby. She's eating asparagus. We didn't have crap food. This man was very particular about his food too. Everything had to be proper. We taught my daughter how to cut steak at 3.5 years old with a steak knife. She was like, that's how a proper lady eats. Sometimes he'd get on to her because she was just a kid. She'd want to pick things up with her fingers. And once in a while I'm going, she's just a kid, Ralph. Back off. That's not how a lady eats. I go, she's a child. He didn't understand that stuff. We get into some little disputes over that too. He's like, well, that's why I've never had children. It's like, well, you know what? Maybe if you did, you'd understand. But how you could not understand. So there was some push and pull. But mostly for the first 5 years, I've been, let me reiterate. I moved in with this guy thinking it was only going to be something temporary. Up till now, it's been almost 10 years. And I'm going to tell you why. So, through the years, my daughter started school and this and that. She's, doing homeworks and things like that. Everything's okay. But he's not a well man. He's getting sicker, smokes like a freight train. I mean, he keeps it out and away from us, kind of, but it's still, smoking is smoking. It's inevitable. So it wafts into the house, and one after another. That's just the way he was brought up. It's a habit. And he couldn't stop. He stopped for 8 months at one point, and then he started again, and it was his demise, which I'll get to. Anyway, as the years go by, he's got a plethora of pharmaceutical drugs. Everything from high blood pressure. He goes to the doctor constantly through the years. But he still drives. He walks very unstable because he's getting neuropathy in his legs. He wouldn't admit it, but very unstable on his legs. He's gotten blown over by the wind in the past. We learned to deal with it. Again, there was times when we'd butt heads. We'd get into arguments over how to cook a tri-tip. How are you going to cook that tri-tip? I go, Ralph, I'm going to cook the tri-tip the same way I've been cooking it the other 40 friggin' million times. It was just stupid. We get into these stupid arguments over nothing because by the afternoon, he'd start getting a little buzz going because that was his lifestyle. And then, you either had the really good guy or the really bad guy. Things could, as you get older, you may have been able to drink like a warrior when you were younger, but that stuff doesn't, your body doesn't hold up and you don't take it like you used to. And the problem was, you go look on the kitchen table. He lived in the kitchen. He just lived in that kitchen in the bedroom, from the kitchen to the bedroom. The rest of the house, other than the garage, because he was a garage guy. Let me tell you also, he was an automobile engineer genius. Racing. Brought Lola race cars to the United States. For those of you who don't know what Lola race cars are, they're kind of like Formula One cars with a body on them. Back in the 60s, he was the crew chief. This man is in magazines in the 80s. But he was failing. His body was failing. His motor skills, he couldn't hold a screwdriver. And he loved to piddle. That was his life. He was a guy who rode motorcycles, bicycles, could snow ski. And all that stuff by the time his mid-50s went away. And I mean, that's me, mid-50s, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden your life is just, you can't do shit. It's pissing him off. So he'd compensate by doing other things, not so good. Sitting around getting, buzzed every afternoon and nothing else to do. Watching TV and just smoking all day long and all night long. So we get into these arguments, and he had a plethora of the drugs, the high blood pressure, the prostate, the friggin' potassium pills, the Lyrica, Celebrex, Percocet, this and that, because he was in a lot of pain. He's fused. He'd go. This was a standard. I'd be at my desk. I'd be here working on stuff, and he goes, and it's like 8:45 or something at night, and he comes out of the kitchen, and he's like, "I'm going to bed, buddy. Good night." I said, "See you in 45 minutes, Ralph." "No, I'm going to bed." All of a sudden, I'm still working away. You hear the bedroom door, and he just quietly goes back to the kitchen again to watch TV or whatever, and smoke some more and get him another drink. And all you would hear is the Bic lighter constantly flicking, and you hear the glass of scotch hitting the hardwood table. It's just the way of life. Okay. So that was fine. The problem was, as the years proceeded, now I never believed I'd be here this long, but I just I was floating back and forth. I had to go out of town a lot, and I just didn't want to. It worked. And my daughter was up the street, I'm close to the house. I just before you know it, time flies. Time flies. I never thought I'd be here this long, but things were, I just said, you know what? It's kind of good. I'm not committing to a whole place, and I'm gone half the time, and again, with my father, one hand washes the other. I took care of him. He needed me a lot. Things would break. He couldn't do it. He knew how to do it, but he couldn't physically do it. The washer, the faucets, the this, the that. He's fallen. He's tripped on his own feet and, overbuzzed, or his feet dragging because neuropathy, they weren't working good, and he'd fall. I said, "I can't believe you haven't cracked your head open, from the," and he'd always blame it on the step to the balcony or this and that, or to the porch or whatever. He'd always find a reason, but it was him. He was buzzed, and that didn't help either. But we'd pick him up off the floor, and he was lucky. I mean, he dive bombed. He was so weak he couldn't even catch himself. As time goes on, these drugs and things like that, his body started not accepting them as well, and he started changing. He started getting mean. I'd come home at night, and I didn't know whether I had Jekyll or Hyde, and it got bad. It got real bad. it started affecting me because, like, I don't want to be here. And a lot of friends of mine would know because I'd be bitching about him, going, this son of a bitch. I go, he's out of his mind. And the problem is he'd start going off, and he didn't feel good, and he bitched to bitch. And unfortunately, I was the punching bag. I happened to be here. So I had to take the blunt end of it, and I didn't want to have no part of it. There was times when I would just come in and go to my room, and I had things or I'd be working on my show, or, because in the early days, there was a lot of footwork I had to do. And I'd be at my computer, and he'd come out and he goes, "You're gonna go blind staring at that thing all night." It's like, screw you. It's like, he did the same thing. He was on YouTube constantly. But, he just would bitch to bitch. But it got to the point where it was driving me nuts. I don't need this shit. I just got through with a divorce that took a huge chunk out of me that, I can't replace. And here I am. It started getting personal. I felt like I was going through a relationship, because I live here. It's like I don't feel like packing it up because he's out of his mind. But he was out of his mind. At nighttime, it was just very, very... You just didn't know. And it got worse. As time went on, it got worse. These past 4 years were just hell. I mean, hell. And I'm bitching to my friends. I'm going, I got to get out of here. I'm starting to look for a place. I'm going, fuck this guy. I'm good, because he needed me. I know financially he needed me. And he needed me in more ways than one. But, but yet I'd cool down and I'd just try to let it ride. I knew he wasn't in his right mind. But it was getting to the point where it's affecting me. It's affecting me, again, it's so personal. Even though it was impersonal. In the morning, I'd try to get through the kitchen and say, "Hey, buddy." And I'd say, "Hey, buddy, you fucking just took my head off. I wanted to strangle you last night." And that was the thing. He's nuts. He's South African Englishman. When I first moved in here, there'd be a shotgun, pistol grip shotgun on the couch with a blanket over it by the front door. He just grew up that way, which is fine. I'm not afraid of guns. I own guns too. He loved guns. But this is the crazy shit. It's like, you get buzzed and you don't know what you're doing. I was afraid, we'd have some of these knockdown, arguments that he'd friggin' shoot me. But then again, he was so weak, I didn't even think he could pull back the friggin', automatic to even get the damn thing loaded. But that's the life I was living, and, it wasn't pleasant. But I kept hanging in there. It got so bad that my daughter would look at me and say, "Why is he so mean?" And she didn't want to come over here anymore. And that bothered me because this is my daughter, and he's affecting my time with my daughter. At the same time, I was getting busier and busier with the show. The show's sucking up a lot of my time because it's a hustle. It's like swim or sink. So my daughter, says, "Dad, I just don't want to be around there." And I couldn't, the last thing I needed is my ex to get involved, and then I'm back in court again. So I let it ride, and I started letting my daughter, because we had long summers. We'd go away for the summer. We'd go, to visit my parents and things like that. And so I've said, okay, if you're not here, I get up, I got to take her to school every day, I drive and pick her up and all that. So she's not here at night. Okay. I don't blame her. I honestly didn't blame her. She got sick and tired of him criticizing. She started getting older and smarter, so she wasn't as funny and cute anymore. She started developing a brain, and she started seeing, he's like, what the hell's wrong with him? Why is he so friggin' mean? Why, and like everything was, it's like she just wanted to be a kid. But he just wanted her to be like prep school. And he grew up in this old St. Bees in England, this school that he was sent to, that, he got a half an egg on a piece of toast, cold, and he couldn't stand cold food. I mean, this stuff etched into his brain to where he was, it set his whole life pattern. My father was like that too. He went to a private school too in Greece, and he says, I woke up to the bell, I went to bed by the bell. And there's something that happened back in the World War II days that it changed people. I mean, it like set the way they are for life. But that's not my problem. You know what I mean? I wanted my daughter. I'm not a strict dad, but I also will not let my daughter grow up to be a pig either. But she can be a child. You got to be a child. And he couldn't understand that. He could not understand that. And everything would go into, well, that's why I never had children. It's like, yeah, thank God. Because I pity them. And we get into these arguments over cooking. We get into knockdown. I wanted to sling the friggin' we'd cook good. We'd be eating asparagus. We had meals. We cooked meals. We didn't eat junk food. We never did. When my daughter was here, we ate as a family, but it got old. I couldn't do it no more. She wouldn't do it. I don't blame her. I wanted to chuck the damn meat out onto the street. I grabbed her. She was in her pajamas one night. We got into an argument over cooking food. And he's like, I can out-cook you any day. It's like, who gives a shit? Cook. But he was sick. I'd be cooking because I can. And sometimes he would cook for us, and that's great. And everything was like, nobody, he would never go out and eat, and he goes, I make the best this and that. And it's like, okay, great. But you know what? There's other spices in life. But nothing was ever good enough except for the way he made it. But I kept looking back and saying, you know what? There's a good guy in there. I mean, I had to keep remembering this. But let me tell you something. It got tough. It got tougher and tougher. So now I'm losing my daughter staying with me for a while. And I'm having a hard time wanting to even be home because it was unbearable. And I had work to do at the show. Again, I was, it was my producer. There was only 3 of us. But I took on a lot of responsibility. I have to keep the ball rolling. I dictate. I did everything, and then I'd, delegate the other things that have to get done. But it all started with me and this show. And he'd drive me nuts. Sometimes he'd come into the living room or whatever, and he'd just want to bitch about something. About my daughter's stuffed animals, or it's like nobody comes over. Nothing was sloppy, but he just wanted to bitch because he had nothing else to do. And then he'd get over-medicated. He couldn't remember what they took. He would not put his pills in like one of those daily pill things. And sometimes he'd get over-medicated. And you could tell. He'd fall asleep at the computer watching YouTube with a cigarette in his hand. He'd burn. The cigarettes would fall out of his hands onto the floor. This was a occurrence all the time. And again, I'm not saying this to bag on him. I'm telling you a story. Because at the end of the story, I'll tell you, it'll all even out. But this is what I had to deal with. It was like babysitting. And oh man, he's fallen out of his chair at the kitchen table because if he started falling asleep, he'd lean the wrong way. Now again, he was in a lot of pain. He'd go to bed, he'd get up 45 minutes later because he couldn't lay down. He was uncomfortable. His neck, his back, it was just ongoing. He was a mess. So I don't blame him for it, but I do, again, he just took it all out on me. Why? Because I was here. And I had to take all this. And again, it's eating away at me. It had me shaking. It was like my divorce, because it was personal. Because I'm going, I got to friggin' pack all my crap up, and I got to move because this guy's just friggin' out of control. And this went on and on and on. And then I'd calm down, and he'd calm down, and it'd be another cycle of it again. And my friends, thank God my friends, they had to listen to this shit all the time. And the ones that know. It's probably a good handful of them, about a dozen friends. I'm very fortunate. But, I just bitch about it because it was just personal. It was very personal. I just want that, and I'd look at him, he'd fall out of the chair onto the floor. And, and sometimes when I wasn't even here. And I'd get so pissed off with them. I said, they're going to find you dead on the floor laying in your own shit because you just can't keep it together. I was pissed. I was pissed. It's a grown man. But that was his life. So what Mr. Ralph used to drink daily, and I just went and got a bottle of it, was Canadian Mist. He always bragged on this. This is it says a blend known for its mellow character and smooth taste. He always used to brag that he used on how smooth this stuff was, and he'd entertain guests, and they couldn't believe, how good it was for the price. This is about a $15 bottle. It's in a lovely plastic decanter, and he, believe me, he had his share of it. And I've drank this with him. It tastes like smooth gasoline. But I bought a bottle of it. This was a daily occurrence. He'd fill up a Scotch glass, about that, and he'd fill 2/3 water. But the thing is that, if you were The problem was that as he was getting older and sicker, it wasn't a matter of the amount. It was the cocktail of drugs that were in his body, and his body wasn't receiving and dealing with it that well. There was times where he could only take all he had to do was take a few sips, and it changed the chemical reaction within him, his head, his mentality, everything. It was getting that bad. We've had the cops here 3 or 4 times. I've called his brother in South Africa bitching because it's like, I've had it. Your brother's out of his mind. One way or another, we got through it. How are we doing on time? Fast forward to this past year. I mean, I was at my wit's end. My father passes away last April, March, the end of March, beginning of April. I'm back and forth a lot. He's getting really bad. He's hacking like a son of a bitch, and he thinks he's got pneumonia. That's what they're telling him. He's on antibiotics since last April. A year ago, last April. I'm back and forth from April till August. And he just coughing and coughing and coughing. Lo and behold, he falls again. And this time he fell pretty bad, and I wasn't here. And he manages to get somebody to take him to the hospital. I don't know how he did, but he did. While he's in the hospital, they diagnose him. He's got full-on COPD. Smoking. And I come running back. I'm out of town. I come home, and let me tell you something. He's been in the hospital for a few back surgeries in the past while I've been here. He'll check himself out within the first couple of days when he should have stayed there and convalesced, gotten better, rested. Get me out of here. He could not stand being in a hospital. Everything sucked. The coffee is putrid. I wouldn't serve it to my worst enemy. Every time. It's like, Ralph, you're a fucking pain in the ass. Really. I'm swearing. Because it's that personal. But I'd have to go get him, and then he couldn't, he'd be a mess, too. He could barely walk, and who's got to take care of him? He'd mess himself. He couldn't make it to the bathroom on time. I'm nursemaiding him, just because they'd have a catheter in him and all kinds of stuff like that. I mean, but he had to come home. You should have seen the relief when he'd just sit at the table and be here. That was his peace. He could not be in the hospital. Nobody wants to be in the hospital in the first place. I totally get it. Nobody wants to be in the hospital. But man, but the thing was, he'd come home, but we would suffer. We had a great housekeeper. Thank God for her. She was gold. I owe her everything because I couldn't have done it on my own because he made such a friggin' mess. He turned that kitchen into my father. My father was the same way. I mean, he'd cook and they'd cook great, but everything was a friggin' shambles. Maybe that's old guy stuff. I don't know. I pray that that's not going to be me. Or at least I'm going to try not to. So he'd come home after surgeries, and then, who would have to be? I'm the friggin' nursemaid. He can't make it to the bathroom on time. He's pissing himself, and while I'm washing his clothes. And you know what? I'm okay. I'm wired that way. I have a heart. I do. Even though I wanted to strangle him, I did what I did. But here we are, last April. He's getting sick all through the summer. He's coughing. He's on antibiotics constantly, not getting any better. He's trying all different things. By August, he falls. Something's going on with him. And he's starting to, again, he was getting crazy. He was getting really, like he was talking like weird stuff. I blamed it on the concoction of all those drugs and his brain. I mean, he's just eating, years and years of this. Lo and behold, he goes into the hospital. They keep him there for, a week and a half, 2 weeks. Get me out of here. I'm going, Ralph, you're not well. Get me out of here. I mean, so I get him home. He's on a walker now. He's that bad. And I get him, and lo and behold, in about 3 days, he's kicking the walker. And I'm going, okay, maybe he's going to get better. And I'm cooking for him. I'm, cleaning for him. Everything. Stuff beyond. I should have been a friggin' a nurse. But he started going backwards again. All of a sudden, his health, he can't breathe. And his blood oxygen, I go, Ralph, you got to go to the hospital, dude. You got to go to the hospital. You're not breathing. He sounded like death. I mean, just bad. It's just all out of the blue. And they're telling him, COPD. And I go, and so I'm starting to learn about this stage of COPD. And so he's back in the hospital. He's in the hospital for 2 weeks again. Get me out of here. They had to have a friggin' woman sit at the door. They can't restrain you because he kept trying to get himself out of bed. And he's going to fall and get hurt. Back, I get him. But get me out of here. I get him out again. I'm nursemaiding him for a week or two. And all of a sudden, his health starts declining again. He can't breathe. He's really starting to lose it. I'm scared because I'm not going to let him die on my watch. Call the ambulances again. Fire department comes. Back to the hospital again. This went on and on like 4 times. Finally, after the 4th time, I said, I can't do this. I won't do this. You're going to die. His blood oxygen, I went to my daughter's a school activity, and when I came back, his blood oxygen was like 85. It's supposed to be 95. That 10-number difference is a huge difference between life and death. And you put that little thing on your finger, and it measures how much blood oxygen you have in you. Finally, at that point, he started to get really, really sick. And so he's staying in the hospital. Then they want to transfer him to a nursing home. They said, let's clean up. They said his esophagus was not functioning properly, and he's aspirating down into the saliva is going into his lungs. So they said, let's clean up the pneumonia, and then maybe we can fix his throat. There's something maybe we can do to correct it to stop that from happening. They put him in a nursing home. I said, Ralph, you got to go to a nursing home. You cannot come home. You keep going backwards. Do you want to get well or don't you? They could better facilitate you. He agreed finally. He's starting to get sicker, so he's getting less ornery. He didn't last in the nursing home for 4 days. He's back in the hospital again. I'm daily, twice a day, shifts because he's a mess. His head can't lay straight. He's got screws in it. I'm speaking for him because he's going in and out. At one point, I'm visiting him, and he thought he's in a mental institution in England. That's, things were starting to get crazy. Low blood oxygen to your brain. You start getting lightheaded. You're not thinking properly. All kinds of hell. This is from August the 8th. This is going on until October. October comes, and he's not breathing. And they're talking, look, he either goes into hospice, he's dying. He can't breathe. Or we do a tracheotomy and put a hole in his neck and see if we can get him stronger once he can breathe better and see if he'll clean up. Maybe he'll get better. I talked with Mr. Ralph, and we had all kinds of conversations. Meanwhile, here's the kicker. While he's in the hospital, now he's from August to October, they had to put a feeding tube in him. He couldn't eat or drink anymore because he's swallowing and hurting himself. He couldn't do it. Now he's dried out. He hasn't had a cigarette since August. He hasn't had any alcohol since August, and all those drugs he's had, they're giving him only the drugs as needed, what he needs. So this man that I wanted to strangle, who drove me absolutely friggin' bananas all these years, all of a sudden is back to the original person that I met, and he's looking at me and he can hardly breathe, and he's constantly wanting to hold my hand, and he's looking at me and he's telling me how sorry he was for everything. And I'm having to listen to this, and I'm going, you drove me friggin' nuts, man. You made me crazy. You made me live it. And he goes, I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I hurt your daughter. I'm sorry I didn't, and I'm sorry for this. I'm sorry for that. And it just, what am I supposed to do? So I said, here's the deal, Ralph. We either go for this surgery or you're going to die. What do you want to do? If you decide to go for this surgery, I will stick by you. I will make sure you get cared for, and we'll go until you say you don't want to go anymore. But there's a possibility you might. The whole thing was on the possibility of him recovering. And he's kicked a lot of illnesses. So, he's an old goat. And I just said, you never know with this guy. He just might. In my mind, he was going to kick it. Even though he sounded like he was at death's door. So lo and behold, we said, okay, we're going for the surgery. They gave him the tracheotomy, but then they had to ship him 60 miles away from me to a hospital that catered to new patients with new tracheotomies until they stable out and get adjusted. So I'm traveling every other day, and 60 miles is 2.5 hours each way minimum in LA traffic. I'm going to Culver City. It's near the LAX airport. And I'm going there because now he has no voice. We talked about a lot of things prior to this surgery, but now he's got no voice, and he's got to adapt. And let me tell you, reading lips is not that easy. And I'm going there because he can't speak. And these people, he's a mess. He's got sensitive, his legs because of the neuropathy. I mean, I wanted to make sure these people caring for him could, you got to watch how you handle him. You can't lay his neck straight because he can't, he's fused. They don't know this stuff. He just comes into the hospital for a tracheotomy. They don't know this. I can't believe how much time this did, but I'm fitting 10 years into an hour, so. This last 8 months has been hell. So he was there for a month. I'm back and forth in the car. I'm spending my life in the car going to this man, making sure. Meanwhile, I'm keeping tabs with his brother. He has an elderly brother who's 2 years younger than him, much better shape, but he's in South Africa. And he said, Peter, I'm not coming. He said, what am I going to do there? He says, I can't make him better. And he says, he's in South Africa. He said, 3/4 of the way around the world, and what good is he going to do? I said, don't worry, I got this. I'll keep you in touch. And that's the way it goes. Finally, after a month, I said, can we get him closer to home now? Can we put him in a regular nursing home? And they agreed that he's ready to be cut loose. So I get him close to me. I get him about 8 miles away from me. The house, whatever. Same thing, though. It's taking up a good part of my life making sure that every single nurse and RN and LVN and the people who clean him up and change him, they took really good care of him, but I was there. I was there morning, noon, and night. Every shift until they got, for a month and a half, because nobody knew this man like I knew him. And making sure they understood him because he had no voice. And I make sure that I was there. I'm going, you got to do this. You watch his feet. Don't touch his feet because his feet are very sensitive from the neuropathy. It hurts. And when you move him, he's fused. And don't let his head lay flat. And, this and that. Meanwhile, even though that stuff, he looked good. Once he got the tracheotomy, his eyes brightened up. He could breathe. He's breathing through a tube that's kind of feeding air into him. But he came back to life. And I'm going, and that tracheotomy could be removed. The whole goal was to still slowly wean him off of it. If his throat would heal, he couldn't swallow properly, and then maybe he could go back to normal. That was the goal. Every time he'd start doing good, something else. He had an ear infection for 3 weeks. I kept saying, there's something wrong with him. He keeps going to his ears. He's got hearing like a bat. Something's wrong. Well, we gave him antibiotics. I go, they're not working. We had to ship him to the hospital again. And when you have a hose attached to you, you're in intensive care. So they used heavier antibiotics through IVs. Finally, after 3 weeks of setback, they cleaned him up and he was better. The earache went away. Just when I think we're going to start working on his physical strength, because now he's been in a bed for months. His legs are getting atrophying. They look like skin and bones. And I kept saying, don't worry, you're going to get stronger. And, because in his mind, he wanted to get up and go to the bathroom. His brain kept telling him to do the things that he used to do, but he couldn't do them. And they were afraid. His arms were okay. He got himself out of bed a few times, and they caught him right before he was hitting the floor. And they couldn't restrain you. They couldn't put even bed rails. That was not allowed in the nursing home. They took good care of him, but they took good care of him because I was all over it. The same thing I learned because my mother lost her ability to walk, and my father was there every single morning. He was there, my eyes, making sure that they were caring for her, because otherwise you'll rot in a corner. It sucks getting old. I swore I'd never have my parents in a nursing home. My mother only, my father didn't. But at a point where you could not facilitate her at the house because our house was not set up to roll her into the bathroom for a shower and this and that. It just wasn't like that. So we had to. She was cared for, but I hated it. I hated being far away. I did everything. I was on the phones every single morning, calling, talking to the people. They knew we cared. Same thing I did for Mr. Ralph. And Mr. Ralph would constantly be grabbing my hand, telling me he loved me and he's sorry. And Mr. Ralph didn't believe in God or anything like that. He was, I don't know what English people, South African, Protestant, whatever. I don't know if they believe in God or whatever, but he did not. And it's really weird. I go, Ralph, what do you want me to do for you? And he looked at me one time and he said, pray for me. So, there was a chaplain in one of the hospitals. She goes, is Mr. Ralph, is he religious? I go, no, but we're working on it. So he had a lot of time to do a lot of thinking. He suffered. These last few months, he suffered. I'm telling you, we were at each other's throats for so long that and here's the thing. The kicker is, my friends were like, why are you going through all this? Because this was a lot. I'm up, going to the hospitals and time and gas and, everything. Stopping doing what I need to be doing to care for him. Because I told him I would. And my friends are like, why are you doing all this? I said, because there's nobody else to do it. And that was, I don't know. I did it because I had to. That's, even though I wanted to choke him out, he just made me so friggin' nuts. But I did it. And I have no regrets. So, Mr. Ralph was cleaning up. I thought he was doing better. And all of a sudden, I go and I'm visiting him a few mornings. I'm going, his stomach is really bloated. And he's talking to me about stuff. Like, he's talking to me about, is there gas in the Beamer? I'm reading lips now at this point. I'm starting to, or it's hard. And I go, what Beamer? Because he had a BMW many, many years ago. But he hasn't had it in 15 years. And I go, Ralph, you don't have a BMW anymore. And he'd go like this, like, I'm losing my mind. And it's like, okay, cool. At least you're aware of that. I don't want to be correcting you and stuff. At this point, let you live. But things are not going good. Finally, he's really, really getting weird. And I go to the desk, I was friends with all these people because, they'd see me every friggin' morning and every damn afternoon and every evening. And I said, something is weird. He's not right. They go, no, he's fine. Because they told me he had a little bit of pneumonia again, but they're giving him antibiotics. I leave. That afternoon, they call me. They go, we're going to send him to the hospital. He's having renal failure. In other words, his kidneys are shutting down. It's like, see, I told you. Nobody knows him like I know him. I knew something was wrong. But, these people in the hospitals, they're just used to everybody. They pay attention, but, their hands are full. And I just didn't want him dying stupidly. I said, he's going to die when it's his time to die. And they sent him to the hospital. And for a week, he gets into the hospital. All of a sudden, he's not even home. Like, the light's on. He had a urinary tract infection. I don't know if anybody knows anything about the elderly getting urinary tract infections. My mother was getting those. She'd go blank out of nowhere within minutes. Fever and confused. And thank God we caught these. I was home one time when she got up to go to the bathroom, and all of a sudden, 15 minutes later, where the hell is she? And believe me, we don't have a big house over there. And she's in the hallway, confused. And I go, something's wrong. That was when I first got acclimated with urinary tract infections. And even a man can get that because they had a catheter in them and just stuff, bacteria, all that kind of stuff. So for a week, but the minute my mother would get penicillin or something, she'd snap out, start recuperating. They were giving him antibiotics for a week, and he's like, his eyes are blinking, and he's jittery, and his feet are twitching. His arms did not move, and I couldn't tell if he heard me. His eyes were open, but they'd follow, but they wouldn't follow, and I couldn't tell if he heard me, but couldn't do anything, or he was just. You'd wave your hand in front of his face, he wouldn't blink. And this went on for a week, and I'm talking now on morning, noon, and night with the ICU nurses because he came in that way. They figure, well, he's just that way. I'm going, no, he's not that way. He listens. He was alert. He's in Pluto right now. Day after day, I kept going in for about 6 days, and he wasn't doing anything. Maybe more than 6 days. I've lost track. They said, listen, we've seen people snap out of this before. All of a sudden, one evening, I go in, and you know how ICU rooms are like a sliding doors. They're like cubicles, but rooms. And I walk in, and all of a sudden, he turns and looks at me, and he starts talking. And it's like, holy crap, man, you're back. Welcome back. And he started talking to me the normal way. But his hands, he was kind of paralyzed. I could tell. I said, move your arm for me, move your arm. And one arm would move, the other one, you could tell he was straining. He was straining to get his brain to tell his hands what to do. He mini-stroked during all this as well. But the fact that he came back to life, I go, okay, we're getting another shot here. A few more days in ICU. They're going to clean him up, and then they'll send him back. And, he had a urinary tract infection. It kicked his ass, but we're going to go for it again. Let's get you stronger, and let's start focusing on your physical strength. Lo and behold, 2 days later, I come walking in because I called that morning. I wasn't able to go, and they go, yeah, he's following my orders. He's following me with his eyes, and he's trying to talk to me, and we're moving his body and stuff. They keep you moving. They move your body so you don't, get all atrophied. And I come walking in, so I come in that afternoon, and I walk in, and there's like 5 nurses around him, and a Asian doctor, and all of a sudden I go, "Hey guys, how we doing?" And they all look at me with like really big eyes, and they go, "Can you give us a minute?" And I go, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Can you excuse us for a few minutes?" And I go, "Okay, but I've seen it all. I didn't know what was going on." So I go outside, and they go, "Can you just go to the waiting room, and we'll come and get you?" I go, "Yeah, but what's going on? Well, just give us a minute." I'm sitting there. All of a sudden you hear, ding, code blue, blah, 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 code blue. And I'm going, holy crap. And let me tell you, the intensive care was not that full, luckily. There wasn't a bunch of sick people there. I'm going, he's dying. Something's wrong. And I'm sitting there and I'm going into oh shit mode because, it's like out of all the frustration, all the crap, but my heart starts opening up again. He's made me cry many times while he's been apologetic to me. Because, it's like, Jesus, we had to get to this point to get to this point? Was it really had to go to their ear? I had to wait till you're dying to tell me you're sorry? And then a few minutes later, cancel code blue. So finally, a nurse comes and gets me. I go, what the hell is going on here? I go, I just walked in, you didn't have no doors closed or nothing. And all of a sudden, everybody's looking at me like I'm some, freak. She goes, well, the surgeon was here. He happened to be in intensive care. We were going to change his trach because he's leaking. It's leaking air. But when they went to change it, all hell broke loose. They couldn't get it to seat properly. They're calling in surgeons. I'm there from 5:30 in the afternoon until 2:30 in the morning because they could not get it to seal properly. They said his esophagus is supposed to be firm like cartilage, but it was mushy. It was like it wasn't holding up anymore. It was disintegrating and it was collapsing. So he was dying. I mean, they were literally holding his mouth closed to try to get the air through the tube, and I was there till 2:30 in the morning, and they managed to stable him out, and I said, I'm going home, and I'll be back, first thing in the morning. I was back at like 7:30 in the morning. And they go like, well, he's stable. We're gonna try and clean him up and see if he stables out, but his blood pressure's starting to drop. I said, okay, but he's an old goat. He's jumped death before. Now, see, in my mind, he's jumped death so much that, another time. Just the same old routine. He'll defy death, and we'll make it, and we'll move on. Well, come that evening, I go see him. He's stable, but, they sedated him. So now he's out because they didn't want him yanking on his tracheotomy. They put another one in him. He's still kind of leaking. It's a bigger one, but they said we've never seen an anatomy like this. It's very unusual. He's still leaking, but he's stable. But his blood pressure's his organs started shutting down. I didn't want to accept it, but there comes a point where everything starts going to hell. I go home that night at like 7:30. At I'm in bed by 11:30, something like that. I'm exhausted. The phone rings at 11:45. Peter, and we're calling on Mr. Ralph. Mr. Ralph's blood pressure, we're having a real hard time. We've got medications and this and that, but we're having a real hard time holding his blood pressure. I go, listen, I can get out of bed and I can come there, but knowing him, he's going to pull through again another night. He's just giving you a scare, and if I did come there, that won't change anything. They got him knocked out. I couldn't even talk to him or anything like that. I said, let's just play it by ear. I said, knowing him, he'll pull through another day, and we'll work on it again. And they said, okay. So lo and behold, 20, 30 minutes later, it's 10 after 12, I get the phone rings again. And, I've had that phone call with my mother at 2 o'clock in the morning when they called me to tell me she passed away. And I hate those calls. And lo and behold, the phone's ringing. You just know. You just friggin' know. And they called. They said, listen, we just wanted to tell you that Mr. Ralph passed away at midnight. And that was it. The fat lady sung. So I said, okay, I'm going to go to bed. And I'll be there first thing in the morning. It's not going to change anything. So I got there around 7 o'clock because their shifts were like 7 to 7 with these nurses. And believe me, I knew all of them in the hospital. And I got there right when the old new ones were coming on, and the ones that were there all night are getting off. And I thank them for everything, for all their efforts, because they put in a lot, because I was standing over them making sure of it. And I thanked them for doing all they could do, but at the end of the day, there was nothing more you could do. Mr. Ralph suffered. He suffered for the past 7 months. But we hung in there. And I kept him going, and I truly feel that he had to go through what he had to go through to get to where he's going, but that's just my opinion. But, again, all I remember is, everybody looking at me all through these times, and they're going, why the hell do you even care after all this son of a bitch has put you through? And the answer is, I don't know, but I had to, because there was nobody else there to care for him. I make no apologies, I never do, for trying to be a decent human being. Mr. Ralph passed away on February the 6th at midnight. It was like a Wednesday night, Thursday morning, a week ago. And it changes everything. It's like the reality of, he's gone. This Wednesday, I'm going to go pick up his remains. He wanted to be cremated. And then I said to him, but when he still had a voice, way back in October, because I didn't know if he was going to survive the tracheotomy surgery. So we had a lot of personal talks about things, stuff, all kinds of stuff. And I said, what do you want me to do with your remains? If you want to be cremated. And he goes, I don't care. And it's like, you don't care? What the hell am I going to do with them? And then we come to this reality. And stuff happened. And now I'm going to be picking up. It doesn't get any more real than that, folks. So Mr. Ralph, he was quite a charmer. You talk to a lot of people, but he was a pain in the ass. I don't blame him for being sick. I don't. And I took a lot of abuse. But it's all over. One person said to me once, because I was managing my parents and him. And why I do it, my parents, of course, I know why I do it. I love my parents. But him, I wanted to strangle him, and he knew it. He made me crazy for no reason. I didn't deserve that. But he apologized for all that stuff, and my friends were like, why do you give a shit about him? Just screw him. And it got close. But deep down, I always knew that somebody needed to be there. I always remember I dated a nurse many, many, many years ago, and she says, I've seen so many people that die alone and they don't have any family. It's very, very sad. My biggest regret was that he was knocked out, and he passed away, and, even though we've said everything we could possibly say, I guess you always you want to say more. So Mr. Ralph is gone, and that changes a lot of things in my life, too. At one point, now I don't have to deal with this stuff. I've definitely earned my wings with him, I think. I'm not going to give myself a pat on the back. I don't need attaboys. I did what I did because I chose to do it. It was hard, though. It took a toll on me, and it took a piece of me also. All these things take a piece out of you. But I did it. And now, again, what's done is done. It's over. And believe me, it's just, again, it's hard to sink in. It's just like when your parents pass, or it's over. It's no taking it back. The memories you keep. And believe me, I could have had better memories. There were some great ones, though. There were some good ones. I tried to remember the good stuff. But my God, I'm never going to forget the bad stuff either, because he made me friggin' crazy. And one thing, getting crazy with divorce, I loved my wife. I lived with my wife, had a child with my wife, this kind of stuff. But he was just a guy, a friend. But nobody else would do. I go, where's all your good friends when you're sick? Because he used to tell me about these people, that people, and everything. There was nobody. Nobody ever called. One friend would call. One guy, older guy, would call and check on him. That was it. I hope that never happens in my life. I don't need, you treat people and you hope that if anything, you just remembered. So that's it. Mr. Ralph, my story, Mr. Ralph. I know it's a long story, but I know you people have stories like this. One thing I'm going to do is, and I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it. I went and bought this bottle of Canadian Mist, and I'm going to do a shot to Mr. Ralph. There's a sound that comes out of this thing. I'll lower the music. This sound, I would hear it from across the house. And listen to this. You hear the plastic? I would hear that sound all the time. That sound. Because I could hear when he was cracking open the bottle. Hope I don't spill it. This stuff is going to make me cringe, but I'll do it. He made me freaking crazy. He did. I mean, I'll never get that stuff out of my head. I'll probably die with it in my head because that's just the way it is. That sound. You'd hear that plastic around the edge crackling. I'd hear that. I'd hear the scotch glass hitting the table, and you hear the Bic lighter constantly flicking, one after another, one after another. But he was part of my life. And as my father said, one hand washed the other. I took care of him. He, me being here with him had me not commit to anything. 10 years almost. Grown man, but I was just too busy doing things. I've got other responsibilities, and I just said, you know what, so be it. But, God, there was a price to pay for that. And now it's gone. It's over. In the next chapter, we're going to move forward as always. But I shared this story because it was a life-changing story for me. It took a lot. I know a lot of you people can have these stories too. I hope one day somebody's going to start using the phone again and start calling in and talking about things. But so anyway, to Mr. Ralph and his ways, he made me crazy, but there still was a part of me that loved him because I try to remember the good in people. I really do. Maybe that's my fault. A lot of people just wash their hands of everybody who does them wrong, and it was definitely a love-hate relationship but I don't blame him. He was just dealt a bad hand, and that's life. And I thank God for giving me the strength to get through it with him, because believe me, I didn't want to, but I did. And now that I did, I'm glad I did it, because at the end of the day, I can say I did the best I could do. I took care of that man no better or worse than I would take care of my own family. In fact, I've had to do a lot more for him than I did my own family. I mean, physically, because I was right here. He had his way, but anyway, to life. Oh my God. Woo! Oh, I forgot how friggin' hard it is to drink this shit. Oh. He'd tell you how smooth it was. Oh my God. Phew. Don't light a match. That is gasoline. Anyway. All right, guys. I've taken this show long, but this is a story that, you know what? This is what it's all about. I'm getting this off my chest for all to hear. And I want you guys to understand that life, you can't keep it all bottled up. Even though I talk to my friends, they know the story. I'm sharing it with the world. The 3 million people that are watching this, I'm sharing it with all of you because I'm no different than anybody else. No different. Whether my bank account has $30 or $300,000 in it, we all have the same thing. It's just life. It's family. Family drives you nuts, and people drive you nuts, and you got problems. I'm thankful I'm, for the most part, healthy. This is a man that did not choose to be unhealthy, although he rode hard. I told him, because I'd equate everything to automobiles, because he was an automobile engineer. I go, Ralph, you cannot friggin' keep punching yourself, pushing yourself so hard. He thought he was, my lungs and heart are fine. I've been to the doctor. He's telling me I'm healthy as a horse. Well, he threw a rod. You know what I mean? You think that engine's real strong, and he threw a rod. And that was it. He limped along for another 7 months, and that's because I helped keep him alive. And again, maybe he should have died earlier and just not suffered so much. But then again, I always think that sometimes you got to go through that stuff. You got to go through that stuff to get where you're going. I truly believe he had a lot of time to do a lot of thinking, and I just pray that he's in a better place now. So God bless Mr. Ralph, and God bless you guys for listening to this. But there's a moral to all the stories. Next week. This divorce stuff really struck a nerve last week, and I think I'm going to make 2 phone calls to 2 other women to discuss a couple of things that they have on their mind. I'm not sure. I don't know. Right now, I just knew that I've been dying because I'd be going through all this stuff, and I was dying to tell you this stuff as it was progressing every week, but I didn't, and I waited. And now he's gone. So I'm not going to talk about it anymore, I don't think. But I appreciate your patience and you guys letting me talk about it. Because again, life's all about stories. Sharing stories to help people. Many people's stories have helped me. You're just leading by example, and that's what I do. I'm Peter G. You're watching Life of Peter G. here on Facebook. Share, please. Share this stuff, please. Again, I had people that are telling me they're doing all they can to help spread the word. I need you to spread the word. Watch parties. Watch parties are important. Don't forget about my beloved Bolt Energy. These people support me, and I support them. I believe in them because, call me crazy, but they believe in me, and I love them for it. Tastes great. If you can't find Bolt Energy because they're new, they're still growing, go to www.drinkboltenergy. Ask them where you can find it. They're working on it. It's not an easy thing, just like this show. Electrify your senses. Everybody wants to be somebody, but how many can endure the struggle to get where you want to go? That's why people quit. Quitting is easy. I love you guys, though, very, very much. This is very important to me, and I'll keep on doing what I'm doing until we get where we're going. Nothing but forward. We're going to take this stuff to streaming network. Somebody is going. I just need one phone call. That right person that's going to go, you know what? We better get this guy before somebody else does. He's just stupid enough to make it. See, every once in a while it makes sense too. Go figure. Is there anything else I want to talk about before I leave? It's been a long show, and I'm sorry, but it's hard to cram in 10 years of life. We did 10 years of life in about an hour. I'm proud of it. No. I'm proud of it. It's okay. It is what it is. I thank you for listening. Please share, all right? From me to you, love you more than anything. See you next Sunday, every Sunday like clockwork, right here live on Facebook, or if you catch it on YouTube, or the podcasts are getting all straightened out. I'm almost there. Next week I get with Ty to straighten everything out, and these things will be coming up every week live, so you can listen to them in the car or work or wherever you are. You don't necessarily have to see this. Remember, I have a great face for radio. At least I'm told that. Okay? All right, guys. I love you. Peace out. Don't take no shit from nobody, but don't be a hard ass. Life is too short. Be kind. Goes a long way. Sometimes, I feel like I'm sacrificing. I'm too nice. I don't care. I feel good about what I do. Love you guys. Peace out.
G-Show, Peter G-Show, Peter G-Show, Peter G-Show. Divorced dad, single dad, divorced dad, single dad. Peter G-Show.